The diplomatic vessel Horizon shuddered violently as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Red warning lights bathed the command deck in an ominous glow as Captain Elena Reyes gripped her chair, dark eyes scanning the cascade of error messages across the main display. "Status report," she demanded, her voice steady despite the ship's alarming groans. "Multiple system failures," Captain, replied Commander Jackson, his fingers flying across the navigation console. "Something disrupted our emergence from FTL. Hull integrity at 62% and falling." Communications Officer Eliza Kwan swiveled in her chair. "Captain, I've established emergency channels to the Confederation observation vessel. They acknowledge our distress signal, but," she hesitated, "they're maintaining diplomatic distance protocols." Captain Reyes nodded grimly. Humanity's first official diplomatic mission to the Galactic Confederation was ending before it truly began. The Horizon had been humanity's pride, a showcase of Earth's technological advancement designed to impress the 7 advanced species that made up the Confederation. Now there was a failing coffin in deep space. "Proximity alert," called out Lieutenant Torres. "Habitable planet detected. Proxima Centauri b. It's uncolonized, but within emergency landing parameters." "Any better options?" Reyes asked. "None within range, Captain, and we have approximately 12 minutes before complete system failure." Reyes made her decision instantly. "Prepare for emergency landing procedures. All hands to crash stations. Evacuate all non-essential personnel to escape pods." Senior Engineer Maya Chen was already running internal diagnostics when the order came through. She quickly delegated emergency tasks to her team before making an unexpected detour on her way to the escape pod bay. "Engineer Chen, where are you going?" called one of the Vrel delegates, its translucent appendages waving in agitation. The alien diplomats had been observing the humans with scientific curiosity since departing Earth orbit. "One moment," Maya replied, punching in her access code to a wall-mounted storage unit. She pulled out what looked like an unassuming metal container with Earth insignia and the words "Standard Emergency Kit" stenciled on its side. The Vrel's sensory nodes pulsed with confusion. "You delay evacuation for that primitive container?" Maya secured the kit to her utility belt. "Trust me, Ambassador. If we're crash landing, this might be more valuable than anything else on this ship." Aboard the Confederation observation vessel, Chief Observer Ziv Tak and his team watched with clinical detachment as the human ship began its desperate descent toward Proxima Centauri b. "Fascinating," remarked Senior Researcher Kren La, her elongated fingers adjusting the observation sensors. "They're attempting a controlled landing rather than abandoning ship entirely." "Predictable desperation," replied Ziv Tak, his scaled skin shifting through analytical color patterns. "Their species has always displayed remarkable but ultimately futile survival instincts." The Horizon burned through Proxima Centauri b's upper atmosphere, the ship's remaining shield generators straining against forces they were never designed to withstand. Inside, Maya braced herself against a bulkhead, one hand firmly gripping the emergency kit. The ship's AI was attempting to navigate toward a plateau region with breathable atmosphere, but the descent was far from controlled. "Brace for impact," Captain Reyes' voice echoed through the remaining functional comms. The crash wasn't so much a landing as a series of catastrophic collisions. The Horizon skipped across the rocky terrain like a stone across water, each impact tearing away chunks of the once proud vessel. When the ship finally came to rest, nearly half its structure had been scattered across 10 kilometers of alien landscape. From orbit, the Confederation observers cataloged the wreckage with precise efficiency. Temperature at crash site, fluctuating between -20 and +40 degrees Celsius. Atmosphere, marginally breathable with elevated carbon dioxide levels and trace toxic elements. Indigenous fauna, primarily predatory. Indigenous flora, largely innatable to carbon-based life forms with human digestive systems. Junior observer Paxley recited the environmental assessment dispassionately. "How many survivors?" asked Zivtok. Scanning shows 12 life signs, all human. The diplomatic delegates were successfully evacuated via escape pods but have left the system. Zivtok's skin rippled in a pattern denoting scientific interest. Establish monitoring satellites. This will make for a fascinating, if brief, synanthropological study. You anticipate their demise? Asked Krenla. Of course, replied Zivtok. Given the planetary conditions and their limited resources, I calculate survival potential at less than 3 planetary rotations. Such a shame. They seemed like an interesting species. Down on the surface, Maya Chen emerged from the twisted wreckage, the emergency kit still secured to her belt. Around her, the surviving crew began to assess their situation beneath an alien sky of swirling amber clouds. Captain Reyes was organizing the survivors while Dr. Sato tended to the injured. Maya, called the captain, what resources do we have? Maya patted the container at her side. More than they think we do, Captain. More than they think. That's their survival technology? Pieces of cord, reflective sheets, primitive cutting implements. Senior xenobiologist Krenlaw's voice carried undisguised incredulity as the observation team watched Maya Chen unpack the emergency kit. The Confederation's microdrones hovered silently above the human camp, transmitting high-definition footage back to the orbiting vessel. Humans are classified as a Level 3 technological civilization, remarked Junior Observer Paxley, his spiral antennae twitching in confusion. Yet these items appear to be Level 1 at best. Zivtok leaned forward, his scaled fingers manipulating the holographic display to zoom in on the contents spread across a flat rock. Catalog all items, he instructed the ship's AI. The inventory appeared on a secondary screen. 1 multi-tool knife with 14 functions, waterproof matches, 50 meters of paracord, 4 Mylar emergency blankets, water purification tablets, a small first aid kit, fishing line and hooks, a compass, a signal mirror, a flashlight with solar charger, packets of dehydrated food, hand warmers, and a detailed survival manual. They expect to survive hostile planetary conditions with this. Medical officer Vex Troll's upper eyes blinked in synchronization, a sign of disbelief among the Quatari species. The projected night temperature alone should be fatal within hours. Down on the surface, Captain Reyes had established chain of command and was assessing their situation with military precision. Listen up, people. We've got approximately 4 hours until sundown. Priorities are shelter, water, and securing the perimeter. Maya had finished organizing the emergency kit's contents, and the crew was looking at the modest pile with mixed expressions. That's it? Asked Lieutenant Torres, the environmental specialist. That's all we've got. Maya smiled confidently. It's more than enough to start with. Captain, with your permission, I recommend we divide into 3 teams. Proceed, engineer. First team constructs shelter using the Mylar blankets and debris from the crash. Second team secures water. We've got purification tablets, but need to find a source. Third team establishes perimeter security. Dr. Reyes, the medical officer, knelt beside the supplies. This first aid kit is basic, but I can work with it. I'll need to identify potential medicinal plants as soon as possible. What about food? Asked communications specialist Jackson, a tall man with a perpetually worried expression. Security Chief Ortega picked up the fishing hooks. I grew up in rural Argentina. Give me 2 hours, and I'll adapt these for hunting whatever passes for wildlife here. Captain Reyes nodded sharply. You have your assignments. Move out. From orbit, the alien observation team watched with scientific detachment as the humans scattered to their tasks with surprising coordination. Most curious, noted Zivtok as Maya demonstrated how to use the fire starter. They're deliberately creating a combustion reaction for comfort, potentially for warmth, cooking, or predator deterrence, suggested Krenla. Though using open flame seems dangerously primitive. As the alien sun began to set, painting the rocky landscape in deep amber hues. The observation team prepared to document what they assumed would be the humans' increasingly desperate final hours. The planet's temperature was already dropping precipitously. Thermal imaging shows ambient temperature now at minus 15 degrees Celsius, reported Paxli, continuing to fall rapidly. The humans will be forced to huddle for warmth, predicted Vextrol, though even combined body heat will be insufficient against tonight's projected low. Instead, the observers watched in growing astonishment as the survivors implemented solutions none had anticipated. Maya and Torres constructed a semicircular windbreak using wreckage panels, positioning it to reflect heat from a carefully maintained fire. The mylar blankets were strategically placed to create a microclimate that trapped warm air. Their manipulating convection principles, Krenlaw observed with reluctant admiration, using the reflective properties of those simple sheets to redirect thermal radiation. Security Chief Ortega had fashioned crude but effective defensive tools by attaching the multi-tool's knife blade to a sturdy branch using methodically unraveled paracord. Dr. Reyes organized the limited medical supplies while creating detailed sketches of local flora for testing. Most impressive to the watching aliens, the humans maintained calm, methodical efficiency rather than succumbing to panic. The temperature has now reached minus 38 degrees, reported Paxli, yet their core body temperatures remained stable. Most peculiar, Zivtok mused, his skin shifting to the deep blue pattern indicating intellectual fascination. They're using extremely basic tools and combinations we never considered. As the longest night of the survivors' lives continued, the observation team's dismissive attitude gradually transformed into something unprecedented in their centuries of xenoanthropological study: respect. Update survival projection. Zivtok instructed the ship's AI, his voice quiet. Recalculating based on observed adaptive behaviors, the AI responded. New projection. Minimum survival duration extended to 15 planetary rotations. Interesting, Zivtok replied, though his skin patterns suggested he found it much more than merely interesting. Most interesting indeed. Down on the planet's surface, Maya Chen checked the camp's improvised alarm system, a perimeter of paracord strung with metal debris that would rattle if disturbed, before joining her crewmates in their shelter. Get some rest, she told Jackson, who looked exhausted from helping construct their camp. Tomorrow we start building for the long haul. You really think we'll make it? He asked quietly. Maya glanced at the emergency kit, now nearly empty as its contents had been distributed into life-saving applications around the camp. I know we will, she said with absolute conviction. This is just the beginning. Day 5 dawned with an unsettling amber haze as dust particles scattered the alien sun's rays. Captain Reyes emerged from the shelter, surveying their improvised camp with critical eyes. The crew had established a functional base using wreckage and emergency kit components, but a new crisis loomed. Water situation, she asked Lieutenant Torres, who monitored their resources. Torres grimaced. We've got maybe 1 day's supply left, Captain. The purification tablets are effective, but our initial water source is dried up. Maya Chen approached, her face smudged with dirt, but her eyes alert. The portable scanner shows potential groundwater 2 kilometers east, but there's a problem. Preliminary readings indicate high mineral content and slight acidity. From orbit, the observation team watched this development with scientific detachment. Fascinating, remarked Krenlau. Their hydration crisis arrives precisely as our models predicted. Indeed, replied Zivtok. The groundwater in that region contains selenium compounds and trace elements toxic to most carbon-based life. Even with their purification technology, the water remains unsuitable for consumption. Junior observer Paxli adjusted the monitoring drones. Should we begin documenting their physical deterioration for the xenobiological archives? Patience, counseled Zivtok. Let us observe their response first. Down on the surface, Maya had gathered the crew's scientists around a flat rock that served as their planning table. The scanner shows elevated levels of selenium, copper, and sulfur compounds, Dr. Reyes explained, pointing to the data display. Normally, these concentrations would make the water undrinkable. What are the tablets? Asked Jackson. Mina shook her head. They're designed for biological contaminants, not heavy metals or mineral toxins. Captain Reyes kept her voice steady. Options? For a moment, silence fell over the group. Then Maya reached for the emergency kit manual, flipping through its weathered pages. There's something here about improvised filtration, she said. We can create a multi-stage system. First, we use charcoal from our fire to create an adsorption filter for the heavy metals. Then we can construct an evaporation, still using the mylar blankets to capture pure water vapor. Will it work? Captain Reyes asked Dr. Reyes. The doctor considered. Theoretically, yes. The charcoal should bind to most metal ions, and distillation would leave contaminants behind. But we'll need to test it. Make it happen, ordered Reyes. The observation vessel hummed with increased activity as the aliens monitored the humans' response to the water crisis. They're constructing an improvised filtration system, reported Paxli with undisguised surprise. Using combustion byproducts as a filtering medium. Activated carbon, corrected Senior Science Officer Mevnak, speaking for the first time. They're creating activated carbon through controlled burning of plant cellulose. Krenlaw's sensory appendages quivered, but the water contains trace elements toxic to most carbon-based life. Most, emphasized Mevnak, perhaps not to them. By midday, Maya and environmental specialist Torres had constructed an elaborate filtration system. First, water from the toxic source passed through layers of charcoal created from their fire. Next, the partially filtered water entered a solar, still fashioned from mylar emergency blankets, where evaporation and condensation completed the purification process. Dr. Reyes carefully tested the first collected drops. Mineral content significantly reduced. Acid neutralized. She hesitated, then took a careful sip. It's drinkable. The observation team watched in stunned silence as the humans began collecting purified water. Their solution is elegant, admitted Krenlaw reluctantly, using simple thermodynamic principles and basic chemistry. But that's not all, said Paxli suddenly. Observer Prime, they're approaching the vegetation field. The monitoring drones adjusted to show Captain Reyes leading a small team toward a field of blue-tinged vegetation that swayed gently in the alien breeze. Those plants contain cyanocompounds, warned Vextrel. Similar to hydrogen cyanide when metabolized by carbon-based digestive systems. They wouldn't, began Krenlau. But the humans did exactly what the aliens feared. Instead of avoiding the unknown plants, Security Chief Ortega carefully harvested samples while Dr. Reyes supervised. Back at camp, the doctor conducted systematic tests, burning small portions and wafting the smoke toward her nose, testing the pH of crushed leaves, and examining cellular structures using a salvage microscope. The leaves contained toxins, she announced, but the tubers beneath appear to have evolved detoxification properties. If we cook them thoroughly, the heat should break down the remaining cyanogenic compounds. They're deliberately ingesting unknown biological matter, reported the horrified xenobiologist aboard the observation vessel. This violates all standard survival protocols. Mevnak leaned forward, fascinated. Wait, they are cooking it first to break down potential toxins. These creatures evolved alongside environmental poisons and developed countermeasures. As night fell, the humans gathered around their fire, drinking purified water and cautiously sampling the cooked tubers. No one fell ill. Instead, they began making plans to cultivate the plants near their camp. Zivtok's scales shifted to a deep blue with intellectual fascination. Update survival assessment, he ordered quietly. Recalculated projection based on demonstrated adaptation abilities, responded the ship's AI. New estimate. Minimum survival duration extended to 45 planetary rotations. Remarkable, whispered Zivtok. Truly remarkable. As Proxima Centauri B's eighth sunset painted the sky in swirls of crimson and amber, Security Chief Ortega returned to camp at a controlled run, his expression grim. Movement in the western ridge, he reported to Captain Reyes. At least 6 large creatures moving with coordinated patterns. Maya looked up from the communications array she'd been attempting to salvage. Predators. Almost certainly, Ortega confirmed. They're using elevation to track our position while staying downwind. Classic pack hunting behavior. Dr. Reyes joined them, medical scanner in hand. Any visual confirmation? Glimpsed one through the portable scope, Ortega said. 6-limbed, low-slung bodies, approximately 2 meters long. They have specialized organs on their heads, likely heat sensors based on how they tracked my movements. Captain Reyes surveyed their camp with calculating eyes. Options. Aboard the observation vessel, the mood had shifted from scientific curiosity to genuine suspense. The monitoring stations were fully staffed as crew members from all departments gathered to watch the unfolding drama. Those are hexapod stalkers, Kren Lao informed the group. Apex predators with highly developed hunting patterns. They track prey using thermoreceptive organs and communicate through subsonic vocalizations. Previous expedition records indicate their hunting efficiency approaches 97%, added Paxli. Once they target prey, pursuit continues until successful. Zivtok's scales had darkened to a deep purple, the color of ethical concern. The humans have no weapons capable of deterring such predators. Perhaps we should consider intervention. Senior Administrator Velcor, who had joined the observation team upon hearing of the humans' unexpected survival, raised a clawed hand. Intervention would violate our primary research protocols. We must maintain observational distance. But, began Zivtok. We continue observation, Velcor stated firmly. Document the outcome, whatever it may be. Down on the planet's surface, Maya Chen had emptied the remaining contents of the emergency kit onto their planning table. We need to think differently, she said. We can't outfight them, so we need to outthink them. Those heat sensors are the key, mused Lieutenant Torres. If they track by body heat. Maya nodded, already following his logic. We create diversions. She held up the remaining hand warmers from the emergency kit. These generate heat for up to 10 hours. And we'll need noise distractions, added Jackson, examining the emergency whistle. Something to confuse their coordination. Captain Reyes nodded sharply. Minotaurus, set up heat decoys at 100-meter intervals along the eastern perimeter. Jackson Patel, prepare noisemakers. Dr. Reyes, get everyone's thermal signatures minimized. Everyone else, we're making weapons. As darkness fell completely, the aliens watched with growing fascination as the humans implemented their defense strategy with methodical precision. They're creating diversionary heat sources, reported the astonished Kren Lao, and dispersing their own thermal signatures using the reflective sheets. The patterns they're establishing, murmured Mevanak. Those aren't just defensive positions. They're a trap, finished Zivtok, his scales now pulsing with intellectual excitement. They're setting a trap for apex predators. The first howl echoed across the rocky landscape as the hexapod stalkers began their final approach. The sound, a bone-chilling combination of reptilian hiss and feline growl, would have paralyzed most prey species with primal fear. The humans responded by activating their plan. Hand warmers strategically placed within crude effigies drew the first predators away from the main camp. When the creatures investigated, triggered noisemakers fashioned from the emergency whistle, and paracords startled them into confusion. The pack's coordination faltered as conflicting heat signatures and sounds disrupted their hunting pattern. Remarkable, whispered Velcor, previous administrative detachment forgotten. They analyzed the predator's hunting methodology and systematically countered it. When 3 predators broke through toward the main camp, they encountered not cowering prey but prepared defenders. Spears fashioned from wreckage metal and emergency kit components met the charging creatures. The humans moved with coordinated precision, calling positions and maintaining formation. By dawn, 2 predators lay dead near the camp perimeter. The others had retreated, their pack structure disrupted by an experience they had no evolutionary framework to process. "They're butchering the carcasses," reported Pax Lie with disbelief as the morning light revealed the humans' activities. Indeed, under Ortega's direction, the crew was carefully skinning the fallen predators, preserving the meat and examining the hides. "These pelts will make excellent insulation," Maya observed, testing the thickness of the leathery hide. "And the tendons can be processed for cordage stronger than our remaining paracord." Dr. Rees carefully extracted various glands. "These might contain compounds worth analyzing. If they evolved to survive here, their biology might offer solutions to our challenges." The observation team watched in stunned silence as the humans cooked predator meat over their morning fire, now wearing newly made fur-lined vests against the morning chill. "They turned a survival threat into resource acquisition," whispered a stunned Zivtok. "I believe we may need to reevaluate our initial assessment of the species." "Indeed," agreed Senior Administrator Velcor, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. "Notify the Confederation Council. This observation has been upgraded to Priority 1 status." 2 weeks into their unexpected stay on Proxima Centauri, the human survivors had established a surprisingly functional camp. Solar stills provided clean water, cultivated alien tubers supplemented their diet, and predator hides offered protection against the planet's temperature swings. But on the 15th day, disaster struck. Engineer Patel was inspecting the partially salvaged communications array when a metal support beam collapsed. Maya heard the crash and Patel's cry of pain from across the camp. "Medical emergency," she shouted, rushing toward the sound. Dr. Reyes arrived moments later, her improvised medical kit clutched tightly. Patel lay pinned beneath twisted metal, a jagged edge embedded in his thigh. Blood pooled beneath him, alarmingly bright against the dusty ground. "I need space to work," Dr. Reyes ordered as Ortega and Jackson carefully lifted the debris off Patel. "Maya, I need the emergency suture kit and the remaining antibacterial ointment." Aboard the observation vessel, the mood shifted dramatically as medical monitoring systems registered the human's injury. Femoral laceration, approximately 12 centimeters in length, with significant tissue damage, reported Medical Officer Vivek Troll. All 4 of her eyes focused on the biological readings. Blood loss approaching dangerous levels for their species. Krinla's appendages twitched nervously. More concerning is the microbial contamination. Our environmental surveys identified 17 distinct bacteria species in that soil, 12 of which produce compounds toxic to carbon-based cellular structures. "Calculating survival probability," announced the ship's AI. "Analysis complete. 97% probability of fatal infection within 3 planetary rotations." Zivtok turned to Senior Administrator Velcor. "Perhaps medical intervention." "Denied," Velcor responded firmly. "The research protocols remain in effect. We observe only." Down on the surface, Dr. Reyes worked with intense concentration, her hands steady despite the gravity of Patel's injury. She had cleaned and sutured the wound with supplies from the emergency kit, but her expression remained troubled. "The laceration is closed," she reported to Captain Reyes, "but unconcerned about infection. The remaining antibiotics won't be sufficient against unknown pathogens." Maya looked thoughtful. "What about those blue-flowered plants near the western ridge? You mentioned they had antiseptic properties when we tested them last week." "Potentially," Dr. Reyes nodded, "but we'd need a more concentrated application than simple compresses." The quiet botanist, Dr. Lin, who rarely spoke, stepped forward. "I might have a solution. On Earth, I specialized in medicinal ethnobotany, studying how indigenous cultures created medicine from local plants." Captain Reyes gestured for her to continue. "If we combine the antiseptic blue flowers with the fungal growth from the cave entrance, the one with enzyme properties, we could create a poultice that might combat infection," Lin explained. Traditional medicines often work through compound interactions that modern formulations overlook. Dr. Reyes considered this. It's worth attempting. Our alternatives are limited. The observation team watched with increasing fascination as the humans gathered materials and began what appeared to be a primitive pharmaceutical operation. "They're creating medicine from scratch," reported the astonished medical officer, "combining multiple botanical compounds based on properties they've somehow identified through rudimentary testing." "Impossible," declared Senior Science Officer Mevnak. "Even with advanced genomic sequencing, identifying medicinal compounds typically requires generations of research." Yet the humans continued their work with methodical precision. Dr. Lin crushed blue flowers in a makeshift mortar while explaining the process to Dr. Reyes. These contain compounds similar to terpenoids on Earth, natural antimicrobials. When combined with enzymatic catalysts from the fungus, they should become more bioavailable. They've somehow identified which local organisms contain compounds similar to their native antibiotics, Vextrol noted with professional admiration. Their observational skills are remarkable. By evening, Dr. Reyes applied a greenish paste to Patel's wound before covering it with a sterile dressing from the emergency kit. "Now we wait," she told the anxious crew. "Monitor for fever or increased pain." The observation team established continuous monitoring of Patel's biological signs, preparing to document the progression of what they considered an inevitable infection. "Temperature holding steady," reported Paxley 12 hours later, surprise evident in his voice. "White blood cell count elevated but within normal immune response parameters," added Vextrol. "No signs of septicemia." By the third day, the impossible had happened. Patel sat propped against a rock, his color good, the wound showing clear signs of healing. "The infection risk has passed," Dr. Reyes announced to the relieved crew. The poultice worked. In the observation vessel, the medical team reviewed the data in stunned silence. "The human has recovered fully," Vextrol finally stated. "Their improvised treatment successfully combated microbial invasion that our models predicted would be fatal." Zivtok turned to Administrator Velcor. "I formally request permission to publish an emergency paper on human adaptive medical practices." For once, Velcor seemed at a loss for words. "Permission? Granted," she finally responded. "The Confederation Medical Council should be informed immediately." As the aliens frantically revised their understanding of human medical capabilities, Maya helped Patel take his first careful steps around the camp. "You had us worried," she told him with a smile. Patel glanced at the small garden where Dr. Lin was carefully cultivating more medicinal plants. "Seems like we keep finding what we need here," he observed. "That's what humans do," Maya replied simply. "We adapt." Day 23 dawned with unusual clarity. The amber haze that typically shrouded Proxima Centauri, temporarily dispersed by high-altitude winds. Communications specialist Jackson stepped out of the shelter, a device clutched carefully in his hands, the culmination of 3 weeks of painstaking work. "Is that what I think it is?" Maya asked, approaching with 2 cups of hot liquid brewed from local flora that Dr. Lin had deemed safe for consumption. Jackson nodded, his normally worried expression replaced with cautious pride. "Crude but functional. A radio receiver cobbled together from salvaged communications array components and emergency kit elements." Captain Reyes joined them, accepting the offered cup from Maya. "Operational range. Theoretical range extends to low orbit," Jackson explained. "If there's anyone broadcasting within our solar system, we should be able to detect them." The signal mirror from the emergency kit made a surprisingly effective signal amplifier once I polished and reshaped it. Aboard the observation vessel, this development triggered intense discussion. "They've constructed a functional communications device." Administrator Velcor's voice carried undisguised disbelief. "From emergency supplies and wreckage components." Senior Science Officer Mevnak examined the technical readouts with growing fascination. "Indeed, the principles are remarkably elegant. They've created a series circuit that amplifies weak signals using minimal power drawn from a solar collector fashioned from reflective emergency blanket material. Can it detect our communications? Velcor asked sharply. Negative, Krenlau assured her. Our systems operate on quantum entanglement principles. Their analog receiver couldn't possibly detect our transmissions. Still, Zivtok noted, his scales shifting to a thoughtful blue-green, the implications are significant. These humans haven't merely focused on immediate survival, they're actively working to reestablish contact. That evening, the human survivors gathered around their campfire, the radio receiver placed ceremonially at the center of their circle. Jackson made final adjustments before activating the device. Static hissed from the crude speaker, occasionally punctuated by atmospheric interference. Nothing yet, Jackson reported, but I'll keep refining the frequency range. If there's anything to hear, we'll find it. What's next? Asked Captain Reyes. Jackson's eyes gleamed with determination in the firelight. A transmitter. It'll be more challenging, but I have ideas. The signal mirror gives us a way to modulate light waves. If we can salvage enough power cells and wire from the thermal blankets. The observation team watched this exchange with growing unease. A transmitter? Repeated Administrator Velcor. This exceeds expected capabilities. Their persistence is remarkable, admitted Paxili. Most species in similar circumstances would focus exclusively on immediate survival needs. Humans don't just survive, Mevnak observed quietly. They refuse to accept isolation. This revelation triggered an emergency session of the Confederation Council. Zivtok found himself presenting the latest findings to 24 of the Confederation's highest-ranking officials. Their diverse physiologies connected through quantum holography from across the galaxy. In summary, Zivtok concluded, these humans have demonstrated unprecedented adaptive capabilities, from basic emergency supplies that established sustainable food sources, medical treatments, defensive strategies, and now communications technology. And they plan to construct a transmitter next? Asked Counselor Dresvor, the Nolarian representative, whose crystalline body structure shimmered with concerned energy patterns. Correct, Counselor. Our analysts project they may achieve rudimentary transmission capabilities within another 20 planetary rotations. This changes our assessment significantly, stated High Counselor Jem Verity. A species with this level of technological improvisation could eventually detect our observation posts. And what might they build next, if given enough time? Added Counselor Tazleth of the Vrel Collective. If they can create communications technology from emergency supplies, what else might they achieve? The debate continued for hours, counselors arguing positions ranging from continued observation to immediate intervention. The final vote was surprisingly close, with intervention winning by a narrow margin. The deciding argument, High Counselor Jem Very summarized, is simple. Any species that can thrive using such basic tools might become either a powerful ally or a concerning adversary. Better to extend friendship while they still view advanced technology with appropriate awe. Down on the planet's surface, Maya sat beside the receiver during her night watch, listening to the endless static. Something about the sound was comforting, a reminder that there was still a universe beyond their small camp, still possibilities waiting to be realized. Jackson approached, unable to sleep. Any signals? Maya shook her head. Nothing yet, but we'll keep listening. And tomorrow we start on the transmitter, Jackson added with quiet determination. One step at a time, Maya agreed. First we survive, then we connect, and eventually. We go home, finished Jackson. Neither of them noticed the small monitoring drone hovering silently above the camp, nor the observation vessel breaking orbit for the first time in weeks, moving into position for official first contact. Captain Reyes emerged from her shelter, gaze instinctively turning upward to the star-filled sky. For a moment, she thought she saw something moving against the backdrop of stars, a glint of reflected light, perhaps. But that was impossible, wasn't it? The morning of Day 24 began like any other. Lieutenant Torres checked the water filtration system. Dr. Lin tended the growing medicinal garden, and Security Chief Ortega performed his usual perimeter sweep. The only unusual element was Captain Reyes's thoughtful silence as she stared at the horizon. "Everything all right, Captain?" Maya asked, joining her with a steaming cup of the herbal tea that had become their morning ritual. "Just a feeling," Reyes replied, accepting the cup. "Something's changed." As if summoned by her words, Jackson burst from the communications shelter. "Captain, I'm picking up a signal, structured, repeating patterns on multiple frequencies." The camp erupted into organized activity. Within minutes, the crew gathered around the crude receiver, listening to the unmistakable pattern of artificial transmissions. Not random static, Jackson confirmed, his fingers making delicate adjustments. Deliberate signals, getting stronger. "Origin?" Captain Reyes asked, her voice carefully neutral. Jackson pointed upward. "Definitely from orbit." "Options?" Reyes looked around the circle of faces, now both hopeful and concerned. "Could be Earth rescue," suggested Patel. "Though the signal pattern doesn't match our protocols." "Or not Earth," Maya said quietly. "We've always known we might not be alone." Captain Reyes nodded decisively. "We prepare for all possibilities. Security positions, defensive measures, and diplomatic protocols. We've survived this long. We'll handle whatever comes next." Aboard the approaching Confederation vessel, preparations for first contact proceeded with methodical precision. Zivtok, now appointed contact ambassador based on his extensive observation of the humans, reviewed final protocols with his team. "Remember, these humans have survived extreme conditions through remarkable adaptability," he reminded the contact specialists. "They will likely have established defensive positions and contingency plans. Surely they'll be grateful for rescue," suggested junior diplomat Rezinar, newly arrived from Central Command. Methnak made the burgling sound that served as laughter among her species. "You clearly haven't been observing these humans. Expect caution, preparedness, and probably a few surprises." As the contact shuttle began its descent, sensors confirmed Mevnak's prediction. The humans had indeed organized defensive positions around their camp. Salvaged metal had been fashioned into primitive but potentially effective weapons. Natural barriers had been strategically reinforced. "They're preparing for potential hostilities," noted Security Officer Vreztan. "Impressive foresight." "No," corrected Zivtok. "They're preparing for uncertainty. There's a difference." Down on the surface, Captain Reyes watched the approaching craft with outward calm that belied her racing thoughts. The vessel was unlike anything in Earth's aerospace catalog, sleek, silent, and moving with impossible precision. "Defensive positions, but no hostile actions unless I give the command," she ordered. "Maya, Dr. Reyes, with me as contact team. Everyone else maintain station." The alien shuttle touched down 50 meters from the human camp, disturbing remarkably little dust for its size. For several long moments, nothing happened. Then a section of the hull reconfigured itself into an elegant ramp. Zivtok emerged first, his scaled form moving with deliberate slowness, upper limbs held in the Confederation's universal non-aggressive posture. Behind him came representatives of 3 other species, each demonstrably different in physiology. Captain Reyes stepped forward, flanked by Maya and Dr. Reyes. Her posture was straight, her expression composed, showing neither fear nor excessive hope. "I am Captain Elena Reyes of Earth Vessel Horizon," she announced clearly. "We are peaceful explorers who survived our ship's crash landing." Zivtok activated his translation matrix. "I am Ambassador Zivtok of the Galactic Confederation. We have been observing your survival efforts with great interest." A moment of silence followed this revelation. Maya's eyes narrowed slightly as the implications registered. "You've been watching us?" she asked. "For how long?" "Since your arrival," Zivtok admitted. "It is standard protocol to observe new species before initiating contact." Instead of the gratitude or awe the Confederation representatives had anticipated, Captain Race's expression hardened slightly. Then you witnessed our struggle to survive and chose not to assist. Zivtok's scales shifted to apologetic blue-green. Our non-interference protocols are strict. What happened next astonished the contact team. Instead of immediately requesting evacuation or technological assistance, Maya stepped forward and presented a small data drive. This contains detailed records of our survival techniques, she explained. Emergency shelter construction, water purification methods, identification of edible flora, predator defense strategies, and medicinal applications of local biologics. We offer this knowledge in exchange for information about your civilization and assistance in contacting Earth. The aliens' puzzlement was evident even across species barriers. You offer knowledge, asked junior diplomat Rezinar, when we have come to rescue you. We offer fair exchange, clarified Captain Reyes. We may need assistance, but we approach as equals, not supplicants. Behind her, the human crew had maintained their defensive positions while simultaneously preparing welcoming gestures, a remarkable dual-purpose response that spoke volumes about their psychological makeup. Zivtok found himself negotiating rather than rescuing. Most surprising to the Confederation representatives, the humans had prepared 3 distinct interaction plans for hostile contact, neutral contact, and beneficial alliance, all using materials from their camp and emergency kit. They planned for all possibilities, Zivtok noted privately to Mevnak, and they view preparedness not as paranoia, but as practical necessity. By sunset, terms had been agreed upon. The humans would transfer to the observation vessel under strictly negotiated conditions, maintaining their command structure, retaining their salvaged equipment, and bringing their hard-won knowledge, including the now famous emergency kit that had become an object of intense scientific interest to the Confederation researchers. As Maya packed the kit that had sustained them for 24 days on an alien world, Jackson approached with an odd expression. "You know what's funny?" he said. "After everything we've been through, it turns out our emergency kit is the most valuable thing we have to offer an advanced galactic civilization." Maya smiled. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the ones worth remembering. One standard galactic year later, the Grand Assembly Hall of the Confederation's Central Complex hummed with anticipation. Representatives from 112 spacefaring civilizations had gathered for what many considered the most significant symposium in recent memory. Primitive Solutions to Complex Problems, the Human Paradigm. Maya Chen stood at the presentation podium, still finding it surreal that she, formerly just a senior engineer on a failed diplomatic mission, now addressed the Confederation's leading scientists and policymakers. Behind her, a holographic display showed the original emergency kit, each component highlighted and annotated. The fundamental principle that enabled our survival, Maya explained, wasn't technological sophistication but adaptability. Each item in our emergency kit was selected for versatility rather than specialization. In the front row, Zivtok listened with the deep blue scales of intellectual engagement. Beside him sat Captain Reyes, now Earth's official ambassador to the Confederation, and Administrator Velcor, whose initial dismissiveness had transformed into scholarly respect. This approach contradicts conventional Confederation emergency protocols, Maya continued. Your standard is to create specialized tools for anticipated scenarios. Our approach assumes the impossibility of anticipating every scenario and instead focuses on fundamental tools that can be adapted to unforeseen challenges. The symposium continued for 3 days, with each surviving crew member presenting different aspects of their experience. Dr. Reyes and Dr. Lin detailed their medicinal discoveries, Jackson explained his communications innovations, and Security Chief Ortega demonstrated defense techniques that had since been adopted by 17 Confederation species for their expedition teams. Most remarkable, noted High Counselor Jem Very during the closing session, is not merely that humans survived, but how their emergency preparedness philosophy reveals a fundamentally different relationship with technology than any Confederation species. Explain, Counselor, prompted Ambassador Reyes. Where advanced civilizations typically progress toward increasing specialization and technological dependency, Gem very elaborated, humans maintain the cognitive flexibility to move between technological tiers without psychological distress. You can build quantum communications arrays or fashion-hunting spears with equal facility. Following the symposium, the interspecies survival protocols underwent their most significant revision in 7 centuries. Confederation expedition vessels now carried what they called regression kits, collections of versatile tools inspired by the human emergency supplies. Training programs taught principles of improvisation alongside advanced technologies. The Emergency Preparedness Division, established under Maya's direction, quickly became one of the Confederation's most prestigious assignments. Specialists from dozens of species trained together, learning to combine human adaptability with diverse biological and cognitive strengths. It's still difficult to believe, Maya remarked to Zivtok as they observed a training exercise where a Vrel diplomat, a Quatari engineer, and an Ilarian biologist worked together to create shelter using only basic supplies. What aspect? Asked Zivtok. That our simple emergency kit catalyzed this entire cultural exchange, Maya replied. When we packed those supplies on Earth, no one imagined they'd become a cornerstone of interstellar diplomacy. Zivtok's scales rippled thoughtfully. Perhaps that's the most important lesson. Your species prepares not just for survival, but for unforeseen opportunity. In the scientific community, researchers developed an entirely new field studying what they termed technological regression adaptation, the uniquely human ability to mentally transition between advanced and primitive tool use without psychological distress. Xenopsychologists theorize this cognitive flexibility stemmed from humanity's unusually rapid technological development, which had preserved cultural memories of earlier technological stages. The humble emergency kit, now replicated and modified for different planetary environments and physiologies, became the Confederation's most requested diplomatic gift. When presented to new contact species, it symbolized both practical wisdom and philosophical approach. Earth's admission to the Confederation proceeded with unprecedented speed. The admission committee's formal recommendation cited one primary reason for fast-tracking their application. Any species that treats survival not as mere endurance, but as a challenge to overcome, armed with nothing but simple tools and complex thinking, brings something irreplaceable to our galactic community. On the anniversary of their rescue, the surviving crew of the Horizon gathered in a private observation lounge aboard the Confederation's Central Station. Through the panoramic window, Earth shone as a beautiful blue marble against the black velvet of space. Captain Reyes raised a glass to unexpected journeys, and to being prepared for them, added Maya, touching her glass to the captain's. Dr. Lin, normally reserved, spoke up. I've been thinking about why our emergency kit fascinated them so much. It's not just the tools themselves. What then? Asked Jackson. It's what the kit represents, Lin explained. The balance between confidence in our technology and humility before the unknown. The acknowledgement that sophisticated solutions sometimes fail, requiring us to begin again with fundamentals. A philosophy in a box, mused Dr. Reyes. Maya smiled, remembering the moment she grabbed that unassuming container before evacuating the dying Horizon. Sometimes, she said, the simplest decisions have the most profound consequences. Across the station, in the Confederation's Central Museum, crowds continued to gather around the Terran Survival exhibition. At its center, illuminated with reverence typically reserved for ancient artifacts, sat a perfect replica of a standard human emergency kit, humble in appearance but profound in implication. The plaque beside it bore an inscription that had already entered Confederation philosophical discourse. Preparation is not about predicting the future, but about creating the tools to face it, whatever it may be. This is the human way.